So who doesn't love playing a great game? I think we all love games. Sometimes we love card games, sometimes we love sports games, sometimes we love some of the psychological games. And that is what we're talking about today is game theory. In your business, there's a way that you can win strategically, you can win negotiations, you can win at positioning when you understand the concept of game theory. Now, this is a concept that is not talked about a lot because, frankly, a lot of people don't understand it. But you know what's interesting is that you might be using game theory already without even knowing that you're doing it. And some of the most successful, talented negotiators in the world and companies use it every single day. They just don't really use the name game theory. I want to break this down for you and show you exactly how it works and how you can use it in your business to really get an edge without having to work harder. And are you ready for that? Okay, let's get started. So this is the concept that we are talking about today, and it is all about the game and how to use game theory in business and how do you win. Now, we're showing this live, but I want you to know I actually created a book about this, and I want you to get the book. I'm going to give you a link for it in a second, and the book will break it down into all of the different parts so you know exactly where and how you can use it. And then most importantly, how is game theory being used against you? Maybe you don't even know when it's happening. And if you did, you could prevent it or maybe just win the game. So I want to dive deep into this. And this is going to be kind of going pretty quickly. So this is the book that you're going to get, Winning Moves, and it's how to apply game theory so that your business can grow. We're going to dive deep into 7, maybe even a few extra theories on how you use it and how it will work for you. And so what is this? What is this all about? I'm going to talk about what's the concept behind it. How did it come about? And you'll be surprised where this came from. You probably realize that, wow, there's a connection here, a very famous connection to a famous movie, a couple famous movies, and we're going to dive deep into that. So how does this look? Okay. What are we talking about? The central assumption in game theory is rationality. Are people very rational actors? And how do you use that to maximize their utility? In the real world, we have to understand that there's some factors that will prevent you from getting ahead. But when you use game theory and you apply it the right way, then you can use this for analyzing your markets, for getting a better competitive strategy if you're not one of the top competitors in your niche, using it for negotiations, handling risk management. And then you'll also see how it's been used against you with all the algorithms that we have in our social media and online when you're trying to do ads. They're all using game theory. And chances are you didn't even realize that this is something being used against you. So they say knowledge is power, and this is going to give you a lot of power. When you are thinking about this, I want you to understand that there's how this all came about. Okay. There's 2 camps. There is the thought that you are a tactician on one side and you do all these tactics and hacks and maneuvers in your business. And then on the other side, the smart side, is the strategic play. And this is what we focus on is, do you have a really smart strategy that can get you to your goal? Because the tactics are just parts, pieces, and projects. The strategy is all about the business plan, the systems, and the success that you're going to have. Now, when you overlap the two, then you are able to use game theory to your advantage. It's a lot simpler than it sounds, but it is based on a lot of physics. And since my PhD is in advanced theoretical physics, I kind of sneak these topics in every once in a while, but I'm going to make it simple for you to understand because game theory is important if you want to grow your own business. And so how do we understand that? I want you to think about these 2 sides of things, right? So you have the tactics and then you have the strategies, of course. And then you have the players that you're talking about. And then you have the economic and social factors. So if we take a look at this diagram, I think you'll better understand what I mean by this, because in the business landscape, it's not just about making transaction after transaction. It's about the human interaction and how do you negotiate and what are those moves. So when we blend math and we blend economics together, that's the origin of game theory. And then you add in the players, and then you add in the social dynamics. And now you actually are not just the player in the game, you're the architect. You're designing this. Of course, you have to understand the rules. You have to anticipate the moves that other people are going to do. And then from that knowledge, you're going to strategize exactly how to make a difference, right? So that your business is not just striving, you are actually thriving. And that is the key. You have to understand all the elements in the game, right? You wouldn't play a game of poker or cards and not know the rules, not know the minimum bets, and not know what kind of hand works better. I mean, is a jack better than a king, better than an ace? Which one is the best thing? This is how you have to look at your business. There's many pieces, and if you don't know how to put them together, then your business is probably struggling. Now, the thing is, what hand are you dealt? What are you using in your business, and how do you actually get the most out of the hand that you have? So you want to understand the basics. Okay, so I'm going to break this down into looking at some of the basics of game theory, and I'm going to give you examples, and you figure out, oh, I can do that here, or this is being done to me there, and then you can use that to grow. The beauty of this is, if you really understand it, you start to use it, you up level your game, you play a much more sophisticated game in the game of business, and this is how you win. And that's why we're here, right? We all want to win. So let me tell you about this guy. And this is John von Neumann. I don't know if you've heard of him. And he is actually a child prodigy. And he grew up in, 1903 to 1957, I believe, and is what's called a polymath. A polymath is someone who is an absolute genius in a number of different areas. So he was an expert in physics and science and computer technology. He was in the Manhattan Project, and actually started with AI way before most of us were born. And let me kind of show you his whole timeline and the connections that he has that you're actually probably more aware of than you might realize. I won't go on this too much, but this is a fascinating man. If you love to read biographies, figure out why people are successful and what makes them tick, he is the one who actually wrote the book on game theory and started this. So he actually was one of the leaders in quantum science, nuclear physics, computer architecture. He figured out how to make self-replicating machines. He was part of the first atomic bombs in World War II. And he also managed to learn many languages since he was young. He had a phenomenal memory, and then he would actually, I think maybe he was just bored, he actually could read and recite back the phone book. Remember those things from way back when? So he had an amazing mind, and he could apply it in so many different areas. And then towards the end of his life, he became really obsessed with how does the brain work? How do we use this tool? And how can it align with the tool of AI, right? And how can the two talk together? So this is way, way, way back before OpenAI, ChatGPT, Gemini, everything. Now, if you know some of these faces, right? John von Neumann was working side by side with Oppenheimer. If you haven't seen that movie, watch that movie about the building of the atomic bomb. And he was also close friends with and studied and worked alongside Einstein. He has his own university, again, wrote the book on game theory. And it's sort of one of those things that people sort of get to. You start to learn about game theory and like, oh, okay, and now it makes sense. But it's not easy. I gotta be honest. It's not that easy figuring it out. But once you do, it's very powerful. So if you want to grab a book, this is not his book because that's several hundred pages. I put together a summary, a checklist that you can use. It's 20 pages. And I wrote this out in a way that you can actually understand with real world examples on how to use this. So go ahead and scan this. And then I want you to make sure that you can get a copy of this and you can download it for free. And then you can start applying it to your own business. That's really the whole goal, is to take these strategies and start using it in your business right away. So let's dive deep into some quick examples. And these are the 4 most popular game theory concepts that are out there. And these are the ones that you will probably use the most. That's Nash equilibrium, prisoner's dilemma. I know you've heard that, but you probably have seen it in movies, but you didn't realize it's a business concept. Zero-sum games and non-zero-sum games. And I snuck in a couple others here that we're going to go into. So you want to figure out, how do you outsmart your competition without constantly changing the strategy? Like, oh, they're doing this, I got to do this now, I got to do this. That'll make you a little schizophrenic in business. And so what we want to talk about first is the Nash equilibrium. This is from the movie. Do you remember A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe? And in that movie, we're talking about, how do you kind of equalize the field? How do you make everything work and everybody work together? And you'll notice there's a lot here about cooperation with other people, right? And so Nash equilibrium is a situation where each player is doing the best they can, okay? And they also take into fact, what's the competition doing? What are other people doing? So you're trying to find a strategy that if you do it, all the players are incentivized to keep doing it. They don't want to change for selfish gain, okay? And so that's what it means by Nash equilibrium. And an example from the movie and how this was used in the movie A Beautiful Mind, and all the guys, all the scientists were sitting around this table, and some women walked in and all of them wanted the blonde, and they were like fighting, well, which one of us is going to go after the blonde? And then John Nash says, you know what? There's a way for all of us to win here. All the women can win, all of the guys can win. And what we have to do is, if we just ignore the blonde and then we all go for the brunettes, then everybody's going to hook up. And that's Nash's equilibrium, okay? So how do you do something where everybody wins, everybody does their best, and you don't have to try and be selfish or just change the game for yourself, because when everyone wins, you win. And that's the concept behind Nash's equilibrium. And I hope that makes sense. So how can you use that in yours? And if you haven't seen that movie, it is a phenomenal movie. So watch that as well. And when you're looking at this in business, it's really about finding stability, okay, with competing markets. Look at Uber and Lyft. And, you know, they could have just competed and raised price, but they actually looked at each other and thought, we can both stay in this market and we can both win. And so they didn't have price wars. They actually kind of priced themselves around the same. So it just becomes a matter of which style do you like. So that's an example of Nash equilibrium in game theory. So another concept is that when you're playing nice, you can make more money. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing for more people to adopt? And this is all about the prisoner's dilemma in game theory. And you have seen this in television shows and cop movies, right? And you have 2 people and they are both taken in, and you want to figure out, how do I get them to either confess or not, right? Who's going to confess? And they go to each person and say, hey, if you confess, we'll give you a shorter amount of time. And but if you don't, they might confess first, and then you're going to go to jail. And so they look at, what's the dilemma here? How much time would they spend in jail if they did confess, if they both confessed, if they both didn't confess? And this is a concept that is all about how do you cooperate. And when you look at a lot of these phenomenons and these concepts, it's about collaboration. It's about trust. And this is the classic example, right? So people might not collaborate, but if they're trying to be really rational about it and get their own way, oftentimes it hurts them more. And so the prisoner's dilemma says, hey, are you going to trust that the other person won't rat you out? Or are you going to collaborate and both do the same thing? Or are you just going to go for your own gain? And my question is for you, if you were arrested with your best friend, and would you confess? Would you say, hey, they did this, I didn't? Or would you try to get the shorter sentence? Or would you be faithful? Would you say, no, I am not a rat, I'm not going to do anything? And that's actually where you get the best results. So just trying to be rational about it doesn't always work, okay? Be nice. That's what we're trying to tell you here. So how do you win without destroying your competitors? That's another factor in game theory. This is where zero-sum and non-zero-sum games come into play. And so let's take a look at how that is. So there's zero-sum and non-zero-sum. Okay, so let's look at the first one, non-zero-sum games. And what that means, it's actually pretty simple. And this is a scenario where the sum of the gains and the losses can be greater than zero, meaning that these collaborative strategies will really work to your benefit. So non-zero-sum games is vital because you're going to create synergy, and you're going to do this through partnerships, alliances, and this is how you can really grow. Now, if you look at zero-sum games and this type of scenario, one player, their gain is balanced against the losses of another. So it's like a scale, right? Up and down. And so if I win, you're going to lose. Or if you win, I lose. That's a zero-sum game. Okay. And this is very common in a competitive market where you see people that are trying to be number one in their market at all costs. And sometimes you're going to see this when you're talking about market share and who's the leader, right? Oh, they got 50% of the market share and they got only this. You can't have two people with 100% of the market share. So that is a zero-sum game. And this is very common, especially if you're in a very crowded market. Now, another aspect of game theory is who should be first or last, right? And does it make sense to be the first to market, right? The market leader, or could you be the second player and come in and maybe learn from the mistakes of the other party? And so everyone says be first to market, especially in SaaS and software. We see this, but is it really the right thing to do? So this first and second mover advantage is from game theory as well. And you're wanting to strategically leverage the market timing. And you saw this with Uber and Lyft, right? You see this with cars all the time and different kind of car makers coming out with different things. You see it with the e-cars. And then the question is, how do you apply it? Are you the first mover, or could you actually sit back a minute and learn from the first mover and take advantage of what they're doing? There's a great strategy that I think Izzy Sharp from Four Seasons talks about, and it was look at your competitor and they might be ahead of you, but look at 1, 2, or 3 things that they do badly and it's really not good, and then double and triple down on those things and be so superior to them at that. So if the number one leader is really bad at customer service and you'd be really good at customer service, or if they're horrible in their marketing, then you be amazing in your marketing. And so that's that first and second mover advantage. So where are you? Are you a first mover, or are you a second mover, or are you bringing up the rest of the train? Okay. So why your promises need to be unbreakable. This is something we don't see a lot in business, and it's very important to see. So we want you to actually, if you're going to put your word out there and say, this is what we do, this is what we stand for, then honor that, be that. Otherwise, people are really blowing a lot of hot air in the market. And so in game theory, this was called credible commitments, where you're signaling out to the world that we're reliable, we're trustworthy, and you put that out there right away. Tesla does a great job with this. And how they did it was by letting the world know, hey, it's an open patent, right? And what they were trying to do is encourage collaboration with other EV companies, right? And so it said, hey, you can trust us. Our stuff is open, it's out there. And Tesla and the whole electric cars were completely dominated by them. Now you see some other players coming in, but you also see a lot of players who came and then disappeared. They just couldn't handle it. They didn't have that kind of promise and commitment to their vehicles that Tesla did. When you're looking at the next category in game theory, think about this. The psychology of pricing and persuasion is very important. See, pricing is something that is not real. It's a perception. And when you're thinking about how do I price my business, am I pricing it just what everybody else does? Am I the high price leader? Like we encourage that with our clients and companies, and with our company, we are not the low ball player, right? Our products and services are very, very high end, and in order to do that, you have to have very high quality and deliver with speed and excellence and have intimacy with your clients. There's factors that come into that. So what end of the spectrum are you in your business when it comes to pricing and persuasion? So let's look at this in game theory. This is called the ultimate game. And this is really how you're going to master fairness in negotiation strategies. And how this works with the ultimate game is that, let's say you're trying to negotiate price, and one person puts out a price and the other party can accept it and they both win, or they don't accept it, they reject it, and nobody wins. So that's the ultimate game, right? It's sort of an all or nothing. Okay, let's say we're trying to negotiate a settlement and your attorney says, okay, we're willing to accept a negotiation of 100,000. And then the party that's liable says, okay, we'll accept that. Okay, then everybody gets what they want and they go home. But if they're like, no, we're not going to take that, then all bets are off the table. So that's how the ultimate game works. Okay. And then there's the stag hunt in game theory. And this is interesting. So imagine like two hunters and they have to choose, are we going to join up together today and go get a stag? Or am I just going to go hunt alone and go find a rabbit? Right? So together you have more power when you cooperate and you can get a bigger win. But if you're trying to do everything on your own, you're probably going to get a much smaller prize. And that is the stag hunt in game theory. And so it's really about partnering or being all on your own and being, an individual player. So there's one more I want to show you, and this is the dollar auction in a game theory. And have you ever been to an auction? It's fascinating, and they're quick and they're fast paced. And this is an interesting concept that you probably are seeing more than you realize. And it's a bidding war, really. And what happens is, as you get caught up in the game of bidding, then usually the price goes up and people are paying more than the item's worth just because the escalation of the price. They're so competitive. It's about the winning rather than the price. And you see this a lot. Oftentimes, you will find this in real estate. And when I used to buy a lot of properties in foreclosure, when that was a big market then, people would just keep going and going. They just were so emotionally committed to having that property, and they would pay way over market price. And what was interesting then, in the audience, there were also people who were shills. They were just kind of baiting the people, trying to get the price up. You see that often in auctions. So be careful when you're pricing things and when you're buying that, buying is an emotional game, but don't get caught up on it on the wrong side of the tracks. So that dollar auction can actually be harmful to your business. And when you start paying too much for that, you're not able to manage your cost of goods and your overhead. And guess what's going to happen? Your profits are going to plummet. And that is not the game. Okay. Then you become this guy here. Then you become the joker. So don't let that happen to you in business. So we've gone through a lot of these strategies. What I want to ask you is, which one can you start doing? Because most business owners are not that great in negotiating. And if you work for a company, maybe you're not that great in negotiating either, whether it's working sales contracts or negotiating for a new position. Maybe we deal a lot with companies that are in the process of workforce reductions and they need to let go a lot of people, sometimes tens and thousands of people all at once. And so we come in and step in and help that transition so that the company doesn't suffer and the employees and executives leaving don't suffer, right? And so this is a way that you can use game theory in your business. Now, if you want some help with this, if you want to figure out how can I get a cutting edge in my business, in my negotiations, in my market analysis, in where we spend money, how we price our product, how we play the game of ads on all the different social media platforms. All of that is game theory. If you want some help with that, just go ahead and book a call. We just hop on a quick call for 10 minutes. Tell me what the issue is. Tell me your one problem. I'll give you one solution that'll move you forward and clear the blocks that are holding you back in your business. If you want more time, more strategies, more resources, we have over 250 free resources to give you on any topic in business that will help grow and scale your business and build an iconic brand. So again, use some of these theories, right? Some of them are pretty common, and you want to figure out, how can I use something that works for my business, whether it's the prisoner's dilemma, the Nash equilibrium, the zero sum and non-zero sum games. They all have value. And what you want to do is figure out, what is the best thing for what I want to do? Where do I want to use this to take my business to the next level? So different examples can help you really figure out, okay, I can use this, I can learn from this, and try these in business. All the companies out there are using those, right? Think about Microsoft and OpenAI, and they decided to partner together rather than compete, okay? And that is part of game theory, right? Using strategic partnerships and cooperation. How can you use that in your business? Look how much money these two companies are making together, and then everybody is following along with that. Another way you can use game theory in your business is when it comes to patent wars and legal struggles that you might be going through and figuring out the strategy around that. Samsung and Apple, those patent disputes they have are legendary, and each side is always retaliating against the other to make sure that they can get an edge on something, or to actually use the Nash equilibrium and make sure that they don't have to change their strategy and they can both be seen as equal players on that. So, for example, Apple used to be known as the one with the great cameras all the time, and now Samsung has really stepped up their game. So, and then people say, well, that was our idea first. Pricing and subscription models is a way that you can implement game theory. Spotify does this really well. So they have their freemium model that, hey, come on, listen to Spotify. And then they encourage you to up level to premium. And you can do this in your business as well. This gives you monthly recurring revenue. Companies look for that as they're growing. So again, if you want this, if you want to see, how can I learn this? How can I use this and start implementing it? I guarantee your competition isn't doing this. They don't know how to play the game. And this today is your way of playing the game. So now within 30 minutes, you learned one of the number one topics that is used in physics and applied from everything to from AI to the atomic bomb and to the concepts of how our brain works. And that's game theory. And if you use it, I promise you, it's going to change the game in your business. So next week, I want you to come back here 5 o'clock on Tuesday, and we have an incredible topic on actually scaling your business in a whole new way. So we will see you next week. And if you have any questions, call Connie.com and make sure just go look in the notes below, and we will get you a link to the game theory book, and you can start applying it in your business. We'll see you next week. And until then, stay iconic.